So very good afternoon to one and all, and I will request Dr. Savleen. She is assistant professor at PGI Chandigarh, and she will be speaking on anatomical aspects of the inferior oblique.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the invite, and thank you, AOS, for choosing this instruction course. I would be talking about anatomy of inferior oblique and history of surgeries. If my slides are visible, sir.
Yeah.
Visible.
The relevant anatomy of inferior oblique, which we must know before we proceed with any surgery, is that inferior oblique is a muscle which is not originating from where the rest of the muscles are. It originates from the antero-inferior angle of the orbit on the orbital plate of maxilla, and then inserts in a fan-shaped manner. Below the inferior rectus it passes and then goes behind the lateral rectus, approximately getting attached around 9.5 mm behind the lateral rectus, and its posterior end is around 1 to 2 mm lateral to the macula. In primary position, it's an extorter with a secondary action of elevation and abduction, primarily because of the angle it is making with the visual axis. The muscle axis is at 51 degrees from the visual axis. So when the globe is adducted about 51 degrees, the action is only elevation. It acts purely as an elevator. When the globe is abducted, the action mainly is extorsion. So that is what we keep in mind when we are examining a patient, that you check for the inferior oblique in adduction because of its elevating action, although it is an abductor. Some anatomical considerations before we undergo any surgery. This is the left eye of the patient for descriptive purposes. This is the inferior rectus and this is the lateral rectus on two muscle hooks. And we kind of have to blindly fish for the inferior oblique because it lies somewhere between and behind the tenons in this inferotemporal quadrant. It's a bulky muscle, it's a vascular muscle, primarily because of its neurovascular bundle, which is found at this myoneural junction. It is the structure which is believed to be holding the mid portion of the muscle and act like an ancillary origin, which is important when we are dealing with especially enterization surgeries of the inferior oblique. It is also important that we know that there's a lot of fat which might be encountered while we are dealing with the inferior oblique surgery. We kind of have to make sure that we do not take on the fat in the muscle hook when we are trying to hook the inferior oblique muscle. Complete securing of the inferior oblique should be done, and we should expose the sclera in the form of a triangle when we hook the inferior oblique between the inferior and the lateral rectus. For practically every surgery on the inferior oblique, these steps have to be followed. Now, primarily, we have three surgeries which have been described or have been advocated and made popular of the inferior oblique, including the recession, the myotomy and myectomy, and the anteriorization. Since anteriorization will be covered in subsequent talks, we believe that there are a lot of approaches, and the several approaches that have been described have different opinions on their surgical success. All these approaches have their own risks, have their own benefits, and the decision to choose the process of an inferior oblique surgery is often influenced by patients' clinical examination, coupled by the training and the comfort level of the surgeon, I believe. So when we go back to look at the history of inferior oblique surgeries, since the topic that I have been given, it was originally described in the form of a myotomy from a nasal approach by Bonnet in 1841. Further modifications to the procedures were done, and its indications expanded to treating superior oblique palsy. And then insertional end of the muscle was where the maximum surgeries were being planned, because if you weaken at the insertion end, the more weakening effect was obtained. Finks and Parks are the two people who have described recession of the inferior oblique, and those are the two most popular procedures that have been followed. Later on, myectomy was also described as just being affected, and Gonzalez et al., further supported by works of Delmont and Park, described denervation and extirpation surgery, which to my opinion now is not frequently being done. So myectomy, the shortest approach, you hook the inferior oblique, you cut, and since there are no scleral passes performed in this procedure, so the safety margin is more and there's no risk of perforation. but you don't know where the free edge of the inferior oblique is. It might, in the future, go to an unpredicted location. And often they say that people who advocate the myotomy and myectomy say that inferior oblique surgery is self-titrating. So if you have an inferior oblique overaction, the muscle gets attached to a place where no longer the elevation effect will be shown. Recession surgeries basically involve the same principle as any recti insertion involves. It detaches the inferior oblique from its insertion and reattaches it at a more posterior position. And effect depends on where you have put the muscle fibers. Anterior transposition also involves detaching the muscle and then reattaching it in a more anterior position. The effects of ATIO are individualized as to and graded as to where you put the inferior oblique in relation to the inferior rectus, whether the station is above or below. Now, anterior transposition, just a word because it's a little bit concerned with the anatomy, I'll just put in. It was described quite in centuries back, but then modified by Alan Scott, Apton Call, and then Elliot Lankin, and then further modifications were done. The concept remains the same, that you convert the posterior fibers of the muscle from the depressive action in the primary gaze and make it an anti-elevator. It also limits up gaze to the range of 30 degree. So what you do is you detach the inferior oblique and kind of attach it near a head behind the insertion of the inferior rectus as originally described. But what happened was when you detach the inferior oblique and then attach it, it leads to stretching of this neurovascular junction. So we have to be careful and decisive of where we want to put the inferior oblique and how taut we want to make these fibers. Kushner described this anti-elevation effect, which was seen after this anti-derization surgeries, primarily done quite in the beginning, because it caused a decreased elevation in adduction, especially if done unilaterally, and because of these taut posterior fibers, which are placed temporal and especially anterior to the inferior rectus. So he described this bunching effect of anterior and posterior fibers could eliminate, and also not putting the inferior oblique ahead of the inferior rectus could also deal with this anti-elevation abnormality. Many modifications of anterior transposition have been described where inferior oblique is put parallel to the insertion of inferior rectus, perpendicular to the insertion, which I'm sure sir would be covering in his talk. And all these weakening procedures, including recession, induce slight amount of esotropia, variably reported in different studies to the extent of 5 to 20 prism diopters. But others have also reported that there are no significant changes on the horizontal deviation. It's only the elevation and depression effects that are more prominent. So before considering any surgery on the inferior oblique, it is important that you choose the procedure depending on the primary position hypertropia, on the lateral gaze incompetence, the measurements, and also looking at the torsion effect, which sometimes is ignored when you look at clinical inferior oblique overaction. More temporal and more posterior you put the inferior oblique, it reduces the effect of the recession, and different mechanisms can cause limitations to this elevation after an inferior oblique. We have to make sure that whatever surgery we are choosing, its insertion of the inferior oblique should preferably not be put anterior to the inferior rectus. I personally never put it in anteriorly. The bunching of the posterior fibers to the anterior fibers, about 2 millimeters, what is mostly recommended, and you should not put do a lateral spread of the inferior oblique to avoid this J deformity. Often when we hook the inferior oblique, we kind of cut it or we kind of secure it a little behind its insertion. So sometimes we induce a resection effect. So while we are dealing with recessions or anti-derization procedures, this resection effect should be avoided, and we should try to hook it as near to the insertion as possible. So this is all I have about the inferior oblique anatomical considerations. Since recession is not being described now, sir had to go last moment. I just have one slide to show on the recession effect, that recession surgeries are usually chosen depending on how much effect you want to get. Traditionally, 10 mm, 12 mm, 14 mm recessions have been described. The two most important surgeries that have been described by Park and Fink. Parks include you recess the inferior oblique by putting it 3 mm and 2 mm behind and lateral to the insertion of inferior rectus. And Finks described it as 6 mm from both the inferior rectus and the lateral rectus insertion at the Finks point, that is called. So these are the two traditional recession surgeries that have been described, and anteriorization Dr. Pandey will be covering in his next talk. Thank you so much once again.
And thank you, Dr. Savleen. Dr. Pandey, sir.
Shall I start?
Yes, sir. And you can take some extra time also, sir.
Sure. Had you told me earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a moment. I'm getting this. Yeah. So Dr. Savleen has covered in quite detail the anatomy and the surgical nuances of inferior oblique. In fact, there could be some repetition because I got some images from the net, and I think that we also got from the net. Now, let's start with over elevation in adduction. You know, this is something we tend to think that wherever there is over elevation in adduction or under depression in adduction, it automatically means that this is due to inferior oblique overaction. Now, this is not true because there could be many other situations which could be creating an over elevation in adduction. And some important conditions which we should keep in mind are DVD, craniofacial syndromes due to exo-rotation of the globes, the orbits, DRS with upshoots, and Foley abnormalities. So, and some more conditions, these are the common ones. So we should always keep in mind that are we dealing with inferior overaction or there is something else. And at times you can also have DVD associated with inferior oblique overaction. So both the components are there. So we need to distinguish how much is because of the DVD and how much is because of the inferior oblique overaction. So this has to be understood. Otherwise, we might be doing wrong surgery and having adverse outcomes. Now, this is just about, Dr. Savleen has already covered that we are doing it for almost 160 years now. It will be 200 years very soon, 180 years you can say. And it was White who described the recession.
Sir, actually full screen. Sir,
Can you
please
hear me?
full screen.
Dr. Subhash,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then Elliott and Nankin in 1981 described ATIO, and in all these, and the ANTIO was described in 2001. So after say a gap of 20 years, every 20 years, there has been some change in thinking about the inferior oblique. From initial 100 years, there was quietude from say 1840 to 1940 when White described the recession. But after that, every 20 years, some change has been there. And the last thing probably which happened, major thing was 2001 when Steiger described NTIO. Is there some problem, Suhash?
No, sir. No problem.
Now we should keep in mind that the undercorrections are 10 times more frequent than overcorrection. So quite often we end up with an undercorrection after inferior oblique surgery as overcorrection. So we must guard against devising procedures which are stronger and titrating it so that we don't end up with undercorrections. Undercorrections would mean vertical component as well as torsional component. So the torsion is also important, and we tend to overlook assessing the torsion. And at times it can create a lot of difficulty for the patient because he may not be able to fuse because of the torsional issue. Otherwise, the vertical deviation and horizontal deviations may not be much different. But if there is torsional component, he will be having a lot of difficulty. Okay.
Sir, please full screen the slide, the full screen.
It's not coming full screen.
It is
No,
coming.
sir.
It is coming full screen.
It is coming.
On my computer, it is full screen.
Dr. Savleen?
Sir, it's not on slideshow mode. Otherwise, the screen is completely visible. I think on slideshow mode, if you put it, So,
Slideshow. Where is the slideshow mode?
sir, it's marked like a play button on the top.
सर वैसे दिख रहा है कोई?
Take just a moment. Just a moment. So ATIO versus IO recession. Slide mode. Slideshow mode. You can hit this top button. No, it's not
The
coming.
slide slow. Slide slow.
Slideshow.
Yes.
Where is it?
Yes, sir. Top of most the home interest and designing like the slide show. Sir, top. No, sir.
Top right or left?
No, sir. This is this button. No, sir. The side button. The yeah, three dot. Yeah. Then upper limb. The undo button has and the button. Yes. That no. Then after ma'am. Then after sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, no. Yes. Back. No, sir. No.
इससे पहले वाला सर?
Yes, sir.
ये
Before that, yes.
Yes, sir.
So the one has the box, yes.
Yes,
Not
sir.
has come.
Yes, sir. That's the fine.
Sorry. Now ATIO versus IO recession. ATIO is a stronger procedure than recession due to anteriorization and change in the direction in the action of the depressor muscle because it acts as sort of anti-depressor, as a sort of a depressor due to the attachment of the inferior oblique to the Lockwood ligament. Now, subsequently, Steiger proposed that the role of neurofibrovascular bundle that this was supported that this acts like a new attachment for this muscle once we do ATIO, and this was supported by clinical, radiological, and histological evidence. Now, Kushner described AES with Y pattern extortion in up gaze and exo, as Dr. Sabin has already said. Now, this was more common if the insertion was broad and it was more than 1 millimeter anterior to the IR insertion. So it is important not to do too much of anteriorization ahead of the IR insertion. So in those cases which were attached more than 1 millimeter anterior to the IR insertion, there it was more common. And this was presenting as a pseudo inferior oblique overaction kind of thing in the other eye because of the anti-elevation effect in the side gaze of this eye, the other eye inferior oblique was overacting because of the Hering's law. So that was seen as pseudo overaction of the inferior oblique of the other eye. So this has to be kept in mind that if the insertion is broad and spread out, this can happen. Other thing important to keep in mind with ATIO is that this has more effect on extortion as compared to the conventional recession. Now, landmark she has already talked about, Dr. Savlin, as we have seen earlier. Also, there is a pseudo insertion, and then the dimensions are there. For recession, you should stick to that line. If you come anterior, then obviously there is going to be anteriorization, and there is going to be more effect. This is again showing the same thing. There is a vortex vein which we should be aware and we should be careful because it also has an intrasteral course. So if you damage it, you can have a lot of bleeding. And this is important when you are doing a resection of about 8 to 10 millimeters. In that range, this usually comes about 2 to 3 millimeters laterally from the 3 to 4 millimeters from the inferior oblique. So one should always look for and be careful not injuring the vortex veins, and they have a lot of variation in the anatomy. So one has to be prepared to localize and avoid it. This is again has been shown by Dr. Savleen. This is just showing ATIO, and the neurofibrovascular bundle comes straight down, and this sort of acts like a new insertion. So this is how it prevents abduction. In abducted position, there is anti-elevation effect. Now, anti-IO Steger proposed in 2001 transposing IO only anteriorly but also nasally to the nasal border of the IR. Now, this IO is placed anterior to the x-axis and nasal to the y-axis so that it converts the IO into a tonic depressor and entorter in adduction. Now, if you look at the figure, this is about the ATIO. You can see that if it is placed laterally and the insertion is spread out as we were talking, now this is going to produce an anti-elevation syndrome because it is coming in direct line of the neurofibrovascular bundle from the below. Now, as we move it medially, as we stop this spreading out of the insertion and make it close, say about within 1 to 2 millimeters, this works okay. Now, if you take it more nasally, maybe just below just close to nasal to the y-axis, this anti-elevation effect will not be there. So it is not easy to put it there. So that is why we went into anterior nasal transposition of the inferior oblique. Now the next figure, we can see that we have taken this inferior oblique further medially and we placed 2 millimeters inferiorly and 2 millimeters posterior to the medial insertion of the inferior rectus. Now by doing this, we have the neurofibrovascular bundle is not coming in the direct line and the eye has turned into entorter because now this direction has changed. So this has become entorter and it has become a depressor, or you can say anti-elevator, whatever word you like to use, because the innervation will only flow for elevation because the innervation is coming to the inferior oblique for elevation. So once that comes, this will sort of depress. So it is like an anti-elevator effect which is there, and this procedure is going to have more effect on extortion because here now there is active intorsion which is taking place as compared to other procedures. So the one advantage of ANT-IO is that if you have more extortion, so this is a better procedure probably to undertake, and there will be no anti-elevation syndrome in these cases. Now the indications for ANT-IO, of course, if there is more than 15 prism diopters of vertical, you should choose between AT-IO and ANT-IO. ANT-IO will be stronger than AT-IO also. If you have a very large V pattern, if you have marked primary inferior oblique overaction, marked extortion, primary inferior oblique overaction can be either it is primary or this could be secondary due to superior oblique palsy or the superior rectus palsy. Now you can also have superior oblique palsy with absent SO tendons or very lax tendons where the deviations can be very large, or this can also be unilateral. Then of course DVD is a very important consideration because this was discovered accidentally that it works in DVD, and a lot of literature is there, AT-IO and DVD. It has been found to be quite useful. Then you have craniosynostosis syndromes with marked extortion. There also it can be of use. Then you have IR insertions, aplasia, because if there is no IR, then again this procedure is a good procedure. And in some cases with DRS and upshoots also it has been done. It has not been very upshoots it works, but it may worsen the downshoot. So one has to be careful. If there is a significant downshoot, one should be careful while doing this. And some people have done AT-IO after resection also. Resection and AT-IO, once we were talking about the AT-IO, about 5-6 millimeter resection, especially when there has been IR disinsertion, traumatic disinsertions. Some people have also done resection and AT-IO, but with ANT-IO that has not been described to my mind. Now, this is one of the main indications for the DVDs, the main indications for AT-IO and ANT-IO. Of course, other situations are there. It can also be done as a second procedure that you have done some inferior oblique surgery and the effect has not been good, as we have been talking that these are quite often undercorrected. So if they are undercorrected, you may convert the recession into ANT-IO, or if it was an AT-IO, you can also convert it into ANT-IO. So that can, that can be done. Now, as we said that Mims and Wood in 1989 accidentally noted, it was AT-IO was described in 1981 by Elliott and Nankin, and in 1989 it was noted accidentally by Mims and Woods that ATIO works well for DVD also, because they did on cases which were having inferior oblique overaction, and they noticed that DVD also got corrected. So since then, there has been more interest in DVD. As we all know, DVD is a very difficult condition to treat, and the results are always under by and large. No matter how much surgery you do, it is always something is left. So it is said that it is never cured. It is sort of elevated, but not eliminated. So it is one of those recalcitrant, difficult situations. So there, these I think two procedures came handy, and subsequently ATIO has also been used in DVD with good outcomes, and there are a lot of literature on ATIO in DVD, but literature on ANTIO in DVD is not very large. There are few studies. It is probably surprising because in 2003. Steiger published his article in JOPS, and after that, for about 17 years, I think there are not too many articles, maybe 3, 4, 5 articles. I have not actually looked very carefully, but they are limited literature even now to my mind. Now, we did a study a couple of years back in a prospective intervention study, control study, to evaluate the surgical outcomes of following anterior nasal transposition of the inferior oblique in DVD of more than 10 prism diopters with IO overaction. The primary outcome measure was residual DVD of more than 5 prism diopters, and secondary outcome measures were impact on pattern and extortion and complications. We took about 20 patients in this study. And this is just a small video. It's not very good quality. It was recorded a couple of years back, and the quality of the recording was poor for technical reasons. But you can just show some steps. So we make an incision. You should be careful that you don't go too posterior, because you will enter the fat pad after doing FDT. So one should not go very posterior, because if you enter the fat pad, as Dr. Sabin was telling us, then it becomes a real problem. You can have fat adherence syndrome and all kinds of problems. So then you isolate the inferior oblique on 2 hooks and then disinsert it close to the insertion. I don't use clamps. I just disinsert. Usually there is not much bleeding if you are close to the insertion. That way you don't have any resection effect. And then we pass 6-0 Weichel suture, block it on sides, and then we isolate the inferior oblique, inferior rectus muscle, and go on to the nasal side and mark 2 millimeter nasal and 2 millimeter inferior. And 2 millimeter nasal and 2 millimeter posterior. You can also put them more nasal and even more anterior, but the results can be, may not be that. I mean, there could be other issues which may crop in, like more intorsion. So in most of the situations, we put it 2 millimeters nasal and 2 millimeters temporal, and the anterior part is, anterior insertion is put 3 millimeters nasal to the point. So there is a difference of 3 millimeters. So in NTIO, we are putting 2 into 2 the posterior fibers and another 3 millimeters nasal the anterior fibers. Now then this neurofibrobascular bundle is not coming in the direct line, so it doesn't act like anti-elevation. Now what we saw here, vertical deviation in PP, DVD, postoperatively DVD, any residual correction achieved, primary inferior oblique overaction, V pattern, fundus changes. Now results were mean age was about 15 years, then gender there were 10 females. ANTIO was done on the larger DVD, and 2 were unilateral. In other 12, we did in smaller DVD, we did ATIO or SR recession. This is showing that we got a correction of about 18.8 prism diopters of the DVD in ANTIO group, and residual was about 3.8. Success was about 9. There was mild upgaze limitation in 4 patients. There was no palpebral aperture changes. Fundus extortion pattern was improved. It's just showing the, you can see this preoperatively, you can see there is a lot of over elevation in adduction, and in lower picture you can also see DVD after, behind the occluder, and after surgery you can see that there is no over elevation in adduction, and there is no DVD. behind the occluder. Now this is showing change in torsion. As you can see in the upper cases, there is a lot of extorsion preoperatively. You can see at least 3 extorsion, and once you look at the lower pictures, the extorsion has got better. So it is good procedure for extorsion. If you are treating extorsion, ANTIO is a good procedure. Now to conclude, ANTIO 2 mm nasal and 2 mm posterior works very well in DVT for up to 15% diopters with coexisting primary inferior oblique overaction. Anti-elevation syndrome, palpable pressure changes are not encountered. Mild elevation deficit may take place. Has remarkable effect on extorsion. Long-term stability of outcomes needs evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a excellent presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Subhash. We have only half an hour taken, another 1 hour we have almost. So we'll have a lot of time for discussion.
Ji, sir.
Stop share. Let me
Uh,
stop.
Sir, my slides are visible.
No, they are not coming. Let me stop share, I think.
Now they are visible.
Not yet, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir. Visible.
so very good afternoon to one and all. I'll be speaking on hangback recession of the inferior oblique surgery. So basically, this inferior oblique has some of the peculiarities in anatomy, appearance, nerve supply, and surgical approaches as compared to the other extraocular muscles. The anatomy has been covered by Dr. Soulin. So basically, inferior oblique surgery remain a challenge for strabismologists, and various type of inferior oblique weakening procedures in the past decade has been useful addition to our armamentarium of the surgical procedures. These historical landmarks have already been described. Technical advances have translated a better outcome. However, the art has to be mastered and skill needs to be acquired. And I will provide an insight into the inferior oblique recession surgery by Hengbeck technique. So various weakening procedures on inferior oblique muscles are myotomy, marginal myotomy, myectomy, recession, anterior transposition, anterior nasal transposition, Hengbeck recession, denervation, and extrapolation. However, recession, anterior transposition, and anterior nasal transposition and Hengbeck recession, they are used commonly. So various indications remain same: primary inferior oblique overaction, superior oblique palsy, VYX pattern strabismus without craniosynostosis, Duane's syndrome with offshoots, dissociated vertical deviations, X-cyclotorsions, chin down head position in patients with nystagmus, and inferior rectus aplasia. AV pattern remains one of the main indication for inferior oblique recession. Fourth nerve palsy is another indication. So what are the contraindications for this surgery? V pattern strabismus without inferior oblique overaction, pseudo inferior oblique overaction and restrictive pathologies like if there is after RD surgeries. So basically, this recession technique is a good technique, and we have published our data regarding 10 mm inferior oblique recession in the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, and it is a simple, safe, effective method for cosmetic and functional treatment of horizontal deviations and V pattern with primary inferior oblique overaction. So basically, the surgical technique remains: you have to retract the globe in extreme elevation and adduction, incision in inferotemporal bulbar conjunctiva 7 to 9 mm from the limbus, blunt dissection of the facial attachments, and muscle has to be isolated over muscle hook, facilitating the direct visualization of the inferior vortex vein underneath. And we have to be careful not to injure the vortex vein, and we don't have to hook the lateral and inferior rectus fibers. And care should be taken to hook the entire muscle and be aware about possibility of multiple congenital insertions. As already described by Dr. Savlin and Dr. Pandey sir, that Parkes procedure and Fink's procedure, they are the commonly performed recession techniques for inferior oblique. This is the surgical technique of inferior oblique recession. So basically, this hangback technique, recession technique, has been described from our center, and we have reported that 10 mm inferior oblique recession is a simple, safe, and effective method for treatment of V pattern with primary inferior oblique overaction. This hangback recession was not done previously for IO because it is more fleshy, inferior oblique is less tendinous, and it does not retract like recti. Then what are the basis for hangback recessions? This inferior oblique will retract into its sheath and shall stay recessed according to the amount of recession done. The advantages of hangback recessions are: it is landmark free surgery. You don't have to remember 6 into 6, 2 into 3, 4 into 2. It is easily gradable. From 6 to 12 millimeter recession you can do. There is minimal manipulation, and muscle is always available for reoperation and adjustments. There is shorter surgical time. There is less chances of perforation, and it is better in children as working space in children is less. You can do the adjustable hangback recession. Course of muscle is not changed, and there is less risk of injury to the macular area. So basically, the technique remains almost same as recession, but there is only modification to the extent that we pass the double arm sutures through a loop, and we cut the muscle from the distal end, and we slip it over 260 vical sutures. So basically, like this, we recess this, we cut it into two parts and suspend this with the help of two sutures. Just thank you.
Now we have that was very good presentation on hangback recession, Dr. Smart, and you must have seen results. Have you seen the results on torsion and this thing V pattern? Have you noticed any difference between recession if you have had any time to compare?
And so basically, we found because you know that once we are doing this surgery and conventional recession, we have to keep in mind the landmarks and all those things. But in this technique, it is very simple. You pass two sutures and cut 3 millimeter away from the insertion and slip it.
Yeah, that's very easy and very, I think, time
Yes.
taken is also less.
Yes, sir. And especially in the centers like ours where there is a lot of load and poor patients, they are lined up, sir.
We have a lot of work, and at times 5-6 patients, one each OT, 7-10 patients at times. So that becomes quite crowded.
When do you do hang back? I mean, very selectively you do it, or what is your procedure? How do you choose the procedure that you're going to do?
Dr. Savleen, in horizontal as well as obliques, 99% of the cases I am doing hang back.
Dr. Pandey, sir, what would you say? How do you decide which inferior oblique weakening will you do?
I don't hang back तो खैर I don't do Dr. Suhash and Dr. Kamlesh का काफी experience है मेरा नहीं है unfortunately. But recessions and ATIO and ANTIO, I do these three. Earlier, I have done a lot of myectomies when I was younger. Probably then you were not with us. I don't remember. But I think initially 90s, I did a lot of myectomies. But then I shifted to recessions. And I was quite happy. But of course, the ANTIO, I mean, ATIO and ANTIO are much stronger procedures. And if you're looking at extorsion, I think ANTIO is good, and the effect on DVD I have seen it works quite well.
And sir,
So
what about unilateral cases like, say, superior oblique palsy? You have to do inferior oblique weakening. So, do you see this anti-elevation effect if you do a unilateral inferior oblique weakening, and what procedure do you choose?
initially it has been unilateral ATIO has been described to produce that word change in vertical, and those issues have been there. So one should avoid doing a unilateral ATIO, I think, as far as possible. And but at times it may not be very gross, and with time it may get better. But I think one should avoid, because elevation deficit will be there with ATIO and ANTIO. Some elevation deficit may be there, which will not be there with recessions. And same thing is with torsion also. If you are looking at more torsion, you should choose ATIO or ANTIO. They are better for torsion as compared to recession.
So they say that this anterior transposition should usually be because this due to this anti-elevation syndrome, they say that if there is significant hypertropia in a case, in cases of patients of esophagesis with more than 25 or 30 prism diopter, only in those cases it should be tried. So what is your
Not that much. It doesn't work that much. 25 PT बहुत हो जाता है. 80 IO, I think 15 to 20. More than that, it doesn't go, I think. Any inferior oblique weakening procedure, like classically, if you know, in superior oblique palsy, they say one muscle will work for about 15 to 16.
yes, sir.
So that is broadly that is there. So ATIO also doesn't go too much beyond that. I mean, it won't cross 20. ANTIO maybe till 25 in some cases you may get, or you may get even lesser. But beyond that, it doesn't really go that far. And if it goes, then it will create incompetence and all those issues. So it's going to be a sort of bag of compromise either way, because there is a point after which is going to create other issues.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Sabeen, anything you want to say?
Sir, sorry.
You want to say something on this? How much effect you get with ATIO and ANTIO versus recession?
Sir, as I agree with you, I feel they are stronger procedures, and usually I feel that there is a difference in the primary position hypertropia, and there's a difference in the contralateral incompetence that they produce. So literature says that contralateral incompetence is reduced more when you do an ATI procedure. So primary position hypertropia might not be affected that much. But clinically, 12 to 14 is, if I have to ask a number, I think that's my range.
Yeah.
Reduction.
And recessions, mostly we are doing 10, 8 or 10.
Yes,
Less than 8, I think it doesn't work well, and more than 10 again becomes too close to the IR insertion and all those issues. So I think 10 is, at least you have some distance from the inferior insertion. Otherwise, they are almost together at each other. And, they may sort of organize with each other. Only thing is, I think when you are opening the IO, you should not go beyond 8 millimeter or so from the limbus, because if you cross that, you will enter the fat pad, and it becomes problem. And at times you may end up with lateral rectus. I mean, because you are taking the globe up and in adduction, So the chances of catching the wrong muscle are always there. So one should be careful. One should know that this is inferior oblique only and not something else which you are catching, and you should identify all those muscles. I mean the lateral rectus, the inferior rectus, and the vortex vein before you do anything. I mean, like,
I also feel, sir, retinal surgeons often, when they are passing that band, they get inferior oblique in the lateral rectus, because that is, I think, very commonly I'm called in the OR, which muscle is this? Because so what I tell them is like, don't hook from, below, because if you're trying to hook it from below, you might get, if you hook it from above the lateral rectus, from like the superior end, you might not, I mean, the chances are less that you will catch the inferior oblique in the hook. So the retinal fellows, they sometimes, they hook it from below and then they get the inferior oblique.
they are very violent as far as retinal
I know.
are concerned. I think they are unduly violent towards doctors. And at times I feel very bad for the muscles because
I know.
they treat them as obstacle, as a hindrance, as a nuisance. Because
Completely
they want to
agree.
pass a by and they feel extracellular muscles are definitely being a problem. Same thing
So
happens when you're doing surgery on the LR. It is better to hook it from above,
above, yes, sir.
from below, of course. At least when
So
you're
for strabismus surgeons, I think that then those fellows that I have with us, they are very gentle, because they see you and then that's why they are being gentle. For the retina fellows, you have to tell them, not because I remember when I had my first posting, when as a GR, I was posted in squint, and then when I went to retina, it was traumatic to watch how the conjunctiva is being.
Traumatized.
Yeah, and have you seen any muscles being pulled into two syndromes? Have you seen any?
Yes, I did. I have. In fact, sir, I saw two. One of my junior residents was assisting Dr. Jaspreet, and I was his senior resident. So
Guru Nanak, you have not seen later.
No, sir, in PGI I saw. I don't remember seeing that in Guru Nanak.
Forget about them.
But it actually depends on the assistant also a lot, because I had a first year junior resident hold a tight middle rectus in in a long standing LR palsy, and it got pulled, and so that's how I saw. But luckily we were able to catch it, middle rectus, and once I saw middle rectus snapped in a retinal surgery only. I presented it in AIOS yesterday, video section. So middle rectus was completely lost when
Medial rectus is not easy to lose while doing retinal surgery. It's usually the inferior rectus which gets into more trouble.
Yes, sir. Inferior rectus, sir, once I saw in a child, which I could reposit back. This was medial rectus, and actually this gave retrobulbar block right in the middle of the bridling, because the fellow felt that the patient is having pain. So the medial rectus completely snapped just behind the insertion. So that was
difficult to understand. What do you think he did?
Sir, he supplemented the block. I have the video. So if the patient was complaining,
this got snapped.
Yeah, and sir, the inferior rectus was hooked, the lateral rectus was hooked, and then the patient started saying pain. So he gave some block, and then tucked. The glove was like completely out of the orbit, and he just pulled on the middle rectus and abducted the globe. So it snapped completely. I'll show you the video, sir. I presented it yesterday. Yeah, because I think strabismologists are more interested in seeing that, because retina, in experienced retinal hands, it doesn't happen that much.
But any surgeon worth his salt doing something like that, I think is really shocking and stunning.
So it was the block, primarily raised IOP, बहुत ज़्यादा. It was the IOP was pretty much, and they were also operating on the 3D Ingenuity. So it was my first experience finding the muscle when you're looking in front on the Ingenuity and doing the surgery like that.
So you could retrieve
Yes, I could, sir.
You were lucky because there was no dissection. Probably it was still caught in its sheath and
kind of, sir. Yes, I could see the sheath, because he had not dissected it much, and it was a little crude dissection.
Otherwise, MR, once it's gone, it's gone. It's very difficult.
Yes.
So I think,
and the patient was a little old, so that also maybe one of the factors. But IOP, yes, I will share the video. Just you see the globe coming out, and it you are abducting the globe, and it just came out.
He's a very violent surgeon. I think he should.
No, so we should. Retinal. We should not call it. Otherwise,
introspection.
So relatively very, very violent, I would say.
And for a sabbatical for at least 3 months, I think, from surgery. No surgery for 3 months. Because if he did something.
No, sir, I always give that benefit of doubt to the retinal, because
surgery is very important. that when to start and when to stop, because अब नहीं आ रहा block तो थोड़ी कि you go on pushing and you take out the whole globe out. So that's recently it has happened.
It happened, sir, a year back.
Yeah.
Sir, you have done this lot of myectomies. So what were the major problems with those?
In myectomies, when I was doing in 90s, I did because from Von Nuden was doing a lot of myectomies. He only described myectomies. So initially I learned from Von Nuden's book to some extent. And I was quite happy with myectomies, to be very frank. And only I thought we should change because we thought that probably myectomies are not so graded. It was obviously by then the decision was on coming on top. And I started doing precisions in 90s, late 90s, and after that I have not done myectomies. But myectomies were quite simple. I mean, much more simpler than what you are even hang by precision.
Yes.
You have to just catch hook the IO, put clamps, cut and cauterize. थोड़ा cautery करना होता है because otherwise those may unite. In fact, I was going to ask you this question in this also because you are not using any cautery in this hindback recession, and the muscle which has been cut is raw, so it can unite anywhere, wherever it goes or doesn't, wherever it finds place. This will sort of heal. That process will start. So what we do in myectomy, we cauterize both the ends so that they don't sort of organize wherever they come. So maybe if you look back your hang back decisions after some time, if there's an opportunity to go back into them, open them up, suppose they are undercorrected, whatever, maybe that will be interesting to study that where actually the muscle is
Attaching.
attaching and what are the other issues maybe. Otherwise, it's really very good.
So when I started doing the surgeries, I also did myectomies, and only in cases where I have a large inferior oblique overaction in children. So there I somehow felt that it is actually somehow titrating itself, but it does come back. Now that I'm following them up over time, I feel that some amount of inferior oblique overaction comes back. But yes, I have not, measured that how much effect it has got, and I feel it is very individual. Like how much inferior oblique overaction would the myectomy correct, and how much it will come back. But I have done, like in children when under general anesthesia, you are doing a exo surgery, and along that I did it when very, grade 4 or something like that, inferior oblique overaction.
So how many you could have done? 30, 40 you could have done? Probably?
So about 20, let's say. Then I completely moved on to recession and yes.
But when you were with us, we were already doing recessions, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Actually, sir, problem is that most of the patients, they are lost to follow up.
That's true. Our patients are lost to follow up, and we just
because most of the patients, they are outstation patients. So they adult patients, they come for cosmesis, and once that aim is achieved, they are not traceable and contactable.
if they are okay, they don't come. If they are not okay,
Not okay, they will go to some other person.
So it's going to be considered is God's grace. So God has given them. So with squint also they are happy. If it goes away, they are happy. If it doesn't go away, they are happy because they think God has given them squint. So squint is a very difficult.
And secondly, some improvement is always there. So they are otherwise.
Because in the society they are programmed that squint cannot be cured. It can only improve. So they come with that impression that it will not be bilkul सीधा नहीं होगा. It will get better. So every under correction is as good as cure. So under correction is no problem. Only when they get over corrected, they get into diplopia.
Yes, sir.
Into diplopia, that is the hassle. But as long as don't get into
diplopia. Under correction is acceptable to them.
Yes, because they feel भाई सुधर तो गया ना. वो तो डॉक्टर साहब ने पहले कह दिया था ठीक नहीं होगा. They have programmed everyone that squint cannot be cured, and I think that needs to be with the change in time and techniques and assessment. Squint can be cured to a great extent, of course. Nothing can be cured 100%, but at least 90-95% of the times we can be close to it.
So for DVDs which do not have any inferior oblique overaction, do you choose between? How do you choose between superior rectus recession and anterior transposition? Do you prefer superior rectus recession also? bilaterally, obviously, in DVD cases.
If there is no inferior oblique overaction, then it is better to do superior rectus recessions, large recessions. If you do less than 6, it's not going to work in DVD. It has to be more than 6, large recessions, and 6 to 10 you can do. Of course, they might produce a V pattern and produce inferior oblique overaction as a secondary measure. Then you might have to do inferior obliques in the second. That requirement can come in, because this will create that kind of incompetence. You also have to see that if there is how much DVD is incomitant and how much DVD is asymmetrical, because if it is, say there is superior oblique overaction, quite often you also have patients which have superior oblique overaction and there is an A pattern. So they are not too many, but I think about 10 to 15% you will find that there is A pattern and there is superior oblique overaction. And they will also have intorsion. So these cases you have to do some superior oblique weakening also, like PTSO, along with superior rectus recessions. So we don't do inferior rectus resections. We are nobody, I think, doing now as a primary procedure at least. And one should try to do bilateral surgery in DVD as far as possible, because it's very rare to find a strictly unilateral DVD unless it is a blind eye and it is that kind of situation. So if you do surgery on one eye, you find that the other eye has gone for DVD. So one has to be, I think, careful while doing unilateral surgery. You should avoid.
So you don't
think-
do inferior oblique weakening. Sorry, Dr. Subhash sir.
No.
Sir, superior rectus recession is the primary procedure of your choice when you don't see inferior oblique overaction.
Yeah.
If there is no inferior oblique overaction.
Yeah, but some people, if there is a very gross DVD, some
Yes.
people also weaken both the elevators. That is also there.
Mhm.
Simultaneous inferior oblique and superior rectus weakening is also there. But I think by and large it's better to do one muscle, one elevator, either inferior oblique or superior rectus, and then see in case need be, one can always think of doing something later, because
Stage surgery, sir. I should do stage surgery.
yeah, it's always better, because there could be some asymmetry also, because DVD is never symmetrical exactly. There's some asymmetry, and you may find, if you do more surgery, you might induce hypertrophy also in one eye. I mean, and globe retraction, all those upper lid retraction, sorry. If you've done large recessions, you can also have upper lid retraction and all those problems. So one has to take all that into consideration.
One last question. I have so many questions for
No,
you.
that's very good, because we have a lot of time, and I think it's always good to discuss. We still have half an hour, Dr. Subhash.
Sir, I think we should close at 3:30.
You are getting worried about the general body meeting.
Sir has to prepare for that.
Batao, Dr. Samlina, what you say?
No, sir, do you ever place the inferior oblique fibers perpendicular, or it's always parallel to?
Always parallel. I don't see any advantage with that. I have not done it.
No, I was just asking because grossly, I don't think it, if you bunch, it's just the anterior and posterior fiber separation. I think that makes a difference. So I personally feel that.
You should have about at least 6 millimeters of difference, preferably once you are doing recession. Less than 6, 8, it should, then I think it's bunch. At times, it is not easy to go that posterior. Is a problem. All of us, I think, is that. But we should try to take at least 6 millimeters gap between anterior and posterior. So normally the inferior oblique is about 10 to 12 millimeters in width. If you look at the insertion, it is quite narrow, and it goes close to macula also. So at least 6 millimeter, I think.
Okay.
More than.
Thank you so much, sir. Even I'm learning from both of you. Continue to learn from both of you.
And was very good. Congratulations, you got some award also. I am told, I just was seeing the list. Some award you got, best paper.
Sir, yes, sir. I did get it, but I'm not eligible for Colonel Rangachari because it's already in publication, sir, that paper.
So you got the award, all right. You got it earlier also?
If it had been a physical conference, tab tak nahi aaya tha, but because it got postponed, so the paper got.
So you can tell them it is your fault. It is not my fault. Why should you be penalized for the fault of others?
Because it got postponed, so now it's accepted for publication.
So
But
they're
it's
not
okay, sir.
doing
It's
well.
always nice to. I mean, if people like it, then I think your goal is achieved.
Every year you win some award in AIOS, Savlin.
No, sir, I have never won in AIOS.
Every year you're winning something.
No, thanks to sir, all of my teachers. I think I mean, I've been lucky. I've been grateful for whatever awards I've won, but I have not. I don't want to be. I have not won in AIOS, sir.
You've been quite hardworking and very sincere
But
person.
sir, हाँ जी, sir. If somebody likes the paper, then also, sir, I feel happy with it.
That's true. Awards are just cosmetic, I think.
They are only for cosmetic purpose.
They're cosmetic purpose, like jewelry. Some people like
So
to
that way, I have been lucky. I was like trained with under all of you, and now also I got a lot of encouragement when I joined here at PGI. So that way, I'm thankful and lucky. I consider myself lucky that I could pursue the specialty of my choice here.
do.
And here also, so Dr. Jasprit is quite supportive, and so
Yeah, they're a very nice person. That's true. They're doing good job in the PGI. Work together. Pediatric ophthalmology, you're doing well.
sir, he's constantly inspiring and guiding to do more. And
True. Yeah, you're doing well.
even Dr. Jagatram, sir, he has also like always made me comfortable. And as an outsider, it's sometimes difficult, but he's very friendly and very nice environment.
Yeah. And he's also done a lot of pediatric cataracts and all.
Anji, sir. Anji. Sir,
Yes, that.
we are trying to continue his legacy of pediatric cataracts now because
My experience. So, Dr. Subhash wants to.
Close. We can close, sir. We have done a lot of discussion.
thank you so much, sir, for the invite. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay, sir.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
sir.
we would like to close the session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Jan.
Yes.
Dr. Subhash and Dr. Sabri.
We shall close this session now.